Well, they're overcrowded and some say understaffed. Hong Kong prisons are in the spotlight as the debate over how to deal with the situation hots up. The hardest hit areas? Detention centers for women and young offenders. For the latter, though, their stay can be not only uncomfortable, but also uncertain. Despite their crime, many juvenile offenders don't know how long they have to serve after being given indeterminate sentences. Inside Story looks at a system that's supposed to give the young a second chance. But as we find out, critics say it's not working, with one-time young offender still wondering how long he'll have to pay for his crime after already spending nearly 20 years in jail.
We don't give up on people, that we continue to say that they are valuable, that we want to affirm them, that they have some positive things to offer to society.
We have to be very careful about the fallouts of such an approach. We may be sending the wrong messages that we are now less determined to tackle a particular type of crime.
Serious offenses committed by people of all ages. And in Hong Kong, offenders can be as young as 14 years old. Their punishment varies from detention to something some argue much harsher. That's being given an indeterminate sentence.
Whoever makes a mistake. Last week, an officer asked me, "What's so real about your situation?" I said, "I not only recognize my sins, but repented more deeply today. But it was too late after I committed the crime. However, I could understand why I have no chance to serve society and repay my family. I committed a serious crime. And when you take my age into account, and if the law wants me to be hung on the gallows, I will accept it willingly and gladly. But since the law has not killed me, why cannot I be treated the same way as others who are similar to myself?"
This inmate, along with 19 others according to the Correctional Services Department, are serving time at Her Majesty's pleasure. It's a category for those with basically an unknown verdict.
I admit I killed someone, but punishment should not mean to push me away in a loisterous time. Try to imagine that a young man, 17 years old, was kept away from society so long. It is without reason for his body and mind. It's also unfair for society and his family.
Well, he's been in prison for 18 years, and he still doesn't know whether he's ever going to get out.
Jane Crawley is the vice president of the Prisoners' Friends Association. The group stays in touch with inmates who committed offenses at a young age and subsequently sentenced at Her Majesty's pleasure, or HMP.
Prisoners who've committed a very serious crime before the age of 18 are often sentenced to Her Majesty's pleasure. These are usually crimes such as murder. If they had been an adult, in the days when the death penalty was still in force, they would have probably been sentenced to death. Now we don't have a death sentence, so they would have been sentenced to life.
Those young offenders who have no sentence, have an indeterminate sentence, should I say, they have now grown up and they're here in an adult prison.
Reverend Rob Gillian counsels adult inmates at the maximum security Shek Pik prison on Lantau Island. Some inmates there are serving life behind bars for crimes committed as a juvenile, and often their uncertainty can easily escape through the barbed wires.
There are some here who have been serving over 20 years.
You've spoken to relatives. Relatives have been in contact with you.
Yes.
What's it like for them? Is it quite frustrating?
Yes, it is, because they, again, don't know when they are going to see their son or relative coming out. And I quite understand the reasons. I mean, for some of them, they are a danger to the society, let's face it, and that they need to have protection for society and for themselves. But there are a number of others who, by their behaviour and their attitude and their change of heart, need to be given a chance.
And a second chance can come in the form of a recommendation by the Board of Review for those given long-term prison sentences. The board scrutinizes life sentences or HMP cases to see if those inmates deserve a break by way of recommending to the governor to commute or determine a sentence. Currently, 4 juveniles are serving time at Her Majesty's pleasure at Peacock Prison, a maximum security institution which also serves as a reception center for all offenders under 25. Inside Story had asked for interviews with these offenders on HMP, along with filming inside the prison. But the Correctional Services Department denied our request.
I think they used to be very confidential.
Herman Hui is a member of the Law Society's Criminal Law Committee. He believes there should be more transparency when it comes to the board and its review of HMP cases. However, a balance must be struck when trust and rights are involved.
Basically, some thing which they feel that should be kept confidential because of the possible impact on the on the welfare officer and the inmates' relationship.
For those under 21, these reviews are done every year. For others, a second look at their cases is less frequent and some believe more cruel.
Every time they know that their sentence is going to be reviewed, they get terribly wound up.
It's understood the board has recommended a small number of cases to the governor for review. Some believe the reason for the small number lies in the board's lack of authority.
They have to be sure, when they are giving a determinate sentence, that there is going to be some ongoing care and continued rehabilitation for that person, and that not just to let them out onto the streets, well, off you go, we feel it. They don't have that responsibility, and as they're only an advisory board.
But that may change soon. Last year, the governor indicated that legislation is being drafted to make the board a statutory body. And this lack of power is one item the government admits as a reason for the board's conservative line in recommending decisions.
The Secretariat have promised that they will try and make it more transparent, but it seems to be taking quite a long time.
If we take certain actions, certainly we have to take into account the community reaction.
Hong Kong's penal system is already plagued by overcrowding, and the government emphasizes any move to go easy on lifers for the sake of alleviating pressures in prisons can backfire.
We have to be very careful about the fallout of such an approach, because we may be sending the wrong messages that we are now less determined to tackle a particular type of crime.
I think, what is now known internationally is that you don't have to lock young people up to rehabilitate them.
Dr. Patricia Gray recently helped put together a study on the social causes of juvenile crime. On the question of crime and punishment, Hong Kong needs to rethink its strategy in helping young offenders in general.
In Hong Kong, there are very few community-based alternatives for young offenders. I think there's still a strong attitude in Hong Kong that young offenders have to be removed from the community. They have to be locked away, they have to be segregated, and they need intensive training within the institution. There's a kind of disciplinarian mentality. The same mentality as in Britain in the 70s.
And discipline is becoming more of an issue for some as Hong Kong approaches a new political era. HMP inmates and those serving life sentences are afraid their future behind bars is just as uncertain as 1997.
We are supposed to have this insurance policy of the Joint Declaration and the Basic Law, which means that Hong Kong law will continue through 1997.
Many of them are very concerned and very worried about the future. And everybody in Hong Kong is worried about and concerned about 1997.
in China also there's a very strong pro-custody, pro-institutionalized approach to young people, and also a very disciplinarian orientation within a concept of rehabilitation.
I find that society is getting further and further away because of the circumstances of crime I committed were very heavily publicized. This is why I have been given such a heavy sentence.
Many may find that time has betrayed their youth and future, but all they can do is hope that they can one day pay for their crime outside prison walls.